and good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. It's actually Town of Old Saybrook night tonight on the Pete Mezzetti Show, and my guest this evening is the illustrious first selectman of the Town of Old Saybrook, Carl Fortuna.
Oh, you're too good to me.
Hi, buddy.
You. How are you?
Good. How are you? Long time no see.
Good.
It's been a while.
Yeah, we were on. I was on last with Leanne Palladino.
That's right.
The town's finance director.
That's
we
right.
We had an interesting discussion, and I wasn't able to find someone to tag along with me tonight.
That's
but,
okay.
In future shows, I most certainly will. I think it's more interesting to have a few other people so that the viewers can hear what the people in town hall are doing and what they do with their day from 8:30 to 4:30.
Exactly.
So next time we'll do that.
Absolutely. What's going on in town?
Well, beyond what's going on in town, I was out of town today. I was up at the state capitol, and there's a, and I think you're familiar with it. You've heard about it. Tourism coalition going on, and Steve Tagliatella from Saybrook Point Inn was one of the instigators of this about funny word, but 3 to 4 years ago.
All right.
And it's gained a lot of traction. Restaurateurs, the Essex Steam Train is a partner, the Town of Old Saybrook's a partner, but it's gone all over the state. And they've gotten a lot of legislative support. Okay. So today at the state capitol, there was a meeting of the Tourism Coalition at 10 o'clock. And I went up to show my support for the coalition. Steve Tagliatella had asked me last week if I would be willing to come up, and so I went up. And then at 11:30, the actual legislative caucus that supports tourism, the Tourism Coalition, met. So the bottom line is this. We have a beautiful state.
Yes.
Okay. Old Saybrook, people tour in Old Saybrook. They, our restaurants rely on tourism.
That's right.
And a lot of small towns and a lot of bigger towns get a lot of revenue from tourism. Tourism generates statewide about $130 million in revenue to the state.
Wow.
And the interesting thing about tourism, Pete, is for every dollar you spend on tourism, to attract somebody from out of state, you're getting $3 back, or to attract someone from another community into your community. For every dollar the state is spending, there's $3 returned, either in profits to a business or back to the state of Connecticut in more tax dollars. And for arts and culture, so not just straight tourism, but for arts and tourism, it's $7 on $1. So it is a great investment. Old Saybrook and the southern, the southern Connecticut River Valley we've been talking about this for years. This has expanded statewide. So we have towns like Torrington, and we have towns in the northwest corner, and we have, of course, the whole Mystic area, which is a huge spot for tourism. Right. But all over the state, this is a bipartisan issue where if they put more money into tourism at the state level, and open, by the way, how about, we drive on I-95 in Westbrook, and what do you see for a rest stop? Closed.
Yes. Right?
So priority number one is to open all the rest stops, okay? Right. So people can actually pull over and maybe get some information on Old Saybrook or wherever else they are in the state.
Absolutely.
But the bigger priority is to spend more dollars advertising Connecticut. Come to Connecticut. Right. And it is a guaranteed money winner for the state of Connecticut, because right now they spend 10 million, 5 to 10 million, I think, and the Tourism Coalition wants them to increase that to 30 million.
Yes.
Okay? So if they were to spend $30 million, the state will generate more money. And what is the state looking to do right now? Generate more money, because we have a lot of bills to pay.
Yes.
So it's a great bipartisan issue in a very partisan, divided time, as we would say, both
Okay.
at the national and state level. So it's a good opportunity for the parties to come together and do the right thing. But the numbers on it are really staggering. And what they would do, if they were to get a $30 million budget, they would create zones in the state.
Okay.
So they would target zones for tourists to come visit, number one. They would open the welcome centers. They would review the state's marketing strategy, and they would create a 5-year tourism plan. So the problem with what's been going on with the tourism budget is it was $7 million one year, it was $4 million one year. They actually went down to zero. At a point during Governor Malloy's tenure, the tourism budget for the state of Connecticut went to zero.
Wow.
I mean, it's just not right. So when you watch TV at night,
Right.
I love New York, come to the Catskills, Virginia, Rhode Island. Rhode Island's tourism budget is 5 times what Connecticut's is, and they're a much smaller state.
Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach, I mean, these are places you see on TV. Nobody's seeing Connecticut unless you go to our website and do a click. So,
Right.
Look, I'm from Old Saybrook. We need more people to come to our town, obviously. We want more people to come to our town to keep our restaurants. We want them to come into town off-season. We want them to come in the fall and the winter. It's good for our restaurants. It's good for Main Street. Because without getting more people into the town of Old Saybrook, other than our resident population,
Right.
it's difficult for restaurants and retail stores to stay in business on Main Street.
Absolutely.
And so when you have additional people coming into town to create more traffic, you have a better chance of having good retail and good restaurants year-round in your community, and not real estate. I mean, nothing against real estate agents and lawyers and doctors. I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
But that is not what you want. When you're walking down Main Street, you don't want to look into too many real estate agents' offices. You don't want to look into too many lawyers' offices or psychotherapist offices. Nothing against any of those professions.
No.
So anyway, I was up at the state capitol today supporting the legislative caucus and the tourism coalition. Really important issue in this budget for the state of Connecticut. Okay?
Okay.
So that was what I wanted to start off with tonight.
Okay.
And obviously we can talk about a little bit about what Governor Lamont is proposing and how that might be affecting our neighborhood towns.
Let's talk about it. What's Governor Lamont proposing?
Well, his budget came out, and so we have new tax proposals, and one of the main things he proposed, Pete, was, what is one of the biggest liabilities we have at the state level is the teacher's pension.
Yes.
Right? Which is an unfunded liability going back to 1931. The state of Connecticut did not start contributing into that pension fund until sometime in mid-1985 or something. So think about it, for 60 years, you had a pension system that no one contributed to. So it became a bigger problem under Governor Malloy, who really paid a lot of attention to it.
Yeah.
And what Governor Lamont is proposing is that the towns kick in a piece. So this is a state plan, and now they want the towns to start contributing to that. And that was something a lot of towns opposed, and Old Saybrook is opposing it also. But at least what Governor Lamont is proposing is somewhat modest. It's probably something that the town of Old Saybrook could live with, but that is a big issue for the towns, because now we're going to start paying off a state obligation, and that is the problem. When the state goes into deficit, do we just turn to the towns more? So that was a piece of legislation that got a lot of traction, and the other piece of legislation that got a lot of attraction, and I wrote about it in the Hartford Courant in an op-ed piece, was Senator Martin Looney threatened to take away the car tax revenue from the towns. I don't know if you heard anything about that.
I don't know.
So
about this.
Old Saybrook collects about $2 million in car taxes.
Yes.
Okay? And what Senator Looney was proposing is that money go to the state of Connecticut and be used for state of Connecticut revenue to be redistributed to towns for education. We all know that money isn't going to get redistributed.
Right.
Okay? Bad idea.
Yeah.
And I really strongly opposed it. The other thing it does is it takes away $2 million in revenue from the town of Old Saybrook and many other towns. It's about 5% of our total revenue. And meanwhile, we still have to raise that money. So if you own a car in Old Saybrook, you would be paying your car taxes to, number one, the state of Connecticut. The town of Old Saybrook would need to raise taxes to the amount that the car tax went away. And so it's the consumer, the resident, who is taking a double whammy. And in addition to that, Senator Looney was proposing a $1 mil increase on everybody's home. A $1 mil increase. So everybody can afford to pay another $1 mil in taxes to the state of Connecticut. It was such an outrageous proposal, and it was strictly a proposal to redistribute from 130 Connecticut towns to about another 25 towns. And we can guess what those towns are.
Yeah.
Bridgeport, New Haven, Stamford, New London, and the like. And it was a very, really bad legislation. The good news is I met with Susan Bisowitz, the Lieutenant Governor, last Friday in my office, and she communicated to me, I may not be at complete liberty to say, but we don't think that bill has a lot of traction right now. So that was a big win to get rid of that. And of course, the regionalization bill's on the schools.
Yeah.
I mean, have you had anybody on discussing the regionalization issue, like Devin Carney?
I have not yet.
Big issue,
should.
hot button issue. Devin Carney is hosting a regionalization discussion later on this week.
Sure.
And I'm sure the people in our area are aware of it. Senator Paul Formica and Senator Norm Needleman will also be there.
Excellent.
But some of those proposals were, aligning towns that didn't have more than, 40,000 people in a school district with the probate court districts. So in other words, Killingworth kids would be in school with Old Saybrook kids. Deep River, it would go all the way up to Haddam and Clinton. So you're talking about a gigantic district where kids would probably be spending a tremendous amount of time on buses.
Yeah.
More than they are going to be spending time in school. So that caused a lot of angst with a lot of parents statewide. I'm sure you heard about it, read about it. The argument to be made is, the town of New Canaan might be spending a lot more money than the town of New Britain, and they can afford to spend a lot more money. But I think if the state wants to address some of those public education problems in cities, I think they have to find another way to pay for it. And they have to find another way to fund that public education and not try to take Old Saybrook and Westbrook and Old Lyme, which have good school systems and good local control, and take that money and those kids and make them into a bigger system. It's a bad idea. And the legislators heard it loud and clear.
Definitely.
And it tells you, if you read about legislation that you don't like, cuts being made to 9-town transit,
right,
which I know you use a lot. It makes a difference when you go up to the state capitol and let your voice be heard. That's really important. And have you ever been up there?
No.
Why not? Why haven't you gone up? No, seriously. And on an issue that affects you,
I don't know.
I'm going to take you up there one time.
I'll tell you what, we'll talk about that. Would you mind
Okay.
sticking around?
No, I'd love to stick
We'll be right
around.
back.
Oh, look, a redhead.
Staring contest.
You still got it.
I know. Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Kids will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show, sitting here with Carl Fortuna, the first selectman in Old Saybrook. Carl, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, we're going to talk about living, open this segment to talk about living in the state of Connecticut.
Well, cost of living.
Cost of living in the state of Connecticut.
We have a very high cost of living.
Yes.
I think you're probably aware of that.
Absolutely.
So there's a caucus at the state level. They call themselves a progressive caucus that is very strongly pushing minimum wage bills to get the minimum wage up to $15 an hour.
Correct.
And then it would be tied to wage inflation.
Yep.
They're talking about paid family medical leave. And they are also talking about tolls, obviously, right?
Right.
So we have a very high cost of living right now. And my concern is that in 3 or 4 years, when tolls actually hit,
Right.
and the person who's making minimum wage is now paying $3 or $4 in tolls to get to and from work,
Right. Right.
is actually going to be a money loser for that person.
Absolutely.
And the business owner, so it's going to cost the town of Old Saybrook about $30,000. When the minimum wage goes to $15 an hour, it's going to cost the town of Old Saybrook about $30,000 more dollars to employ the same number of employees at our beaches and at mini golf. That's a big number.
That is.
And that number, what do we do with that number? We're going to pay those kids.
Yeah.
People still want a mini golf. We
Yeah.
don't want to raise the price on mini golf.
No.
So what we're going to do is probably turn to the taxpayer again, because we need to pay kids,
Right.
16-year-old kids who just want to work at mini golf.
Right.
They're not looking to necessarily make $15 an hour, although it's very nice.
Exactly.
So these are all good. They seem like great ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. If you need to take care of a sibling or a mother, and you can leave your job and get paid to leave your job and take care of a sick family member, it's a wonderful thing. Okay. So they're proposing paid family medical leave, and the minimum wage, and the tolls. My concern is we have a very high cost of living right now.
Right.
What is that cost of living going to be in 3 to 5 years when all these, some entitlements
Yeah.
and then the tolls come into being? I think the legislature needs to not do it all in one session. I think they need to get a handle on the budget deficit. We have a $4 billion budget deficit in the state of Connecticut. And here they are. I think it's a bad idea. I think they're moving too quick. I just worry about the state of Connecticut. I haven't heard anything from the governor about resolving this $4 billion deficit that we have between next year and the year after that. And they're talking about all these new social programs. And it just concerns me as to where we're going to be in 3 to 5 years. And right now, we're in a good economy.
Absolutely.
What happens when the economy turns around a little bit?
Exactly.
And it's not as good. And then, of course, sports betting and marijuana.
I was going to say, let's talk about that.
Well, what do you think about that? Do you have an opinion on sports betting or marijuana? I don't want to do all the talking.
You don't want to do all the talking? Why not?
Anyway, so the sports betting, look, it exists. I
Yeah.
think people are probably illegally sports betting as long as some of that money goes back into people who are addicted and have a problem. Because when it's on my phone, not me, but if you have a problem gambler who now has to drive to the casino
Right.
to place a bet,
Yeah.
and now they're going to be able to do it on their mobile app,
Yeah,
that concerns me.
that's an issue.
And with regard to marijuana, I know the argument is it's out there, people smoke it, even kids have access to it.
Yeah.
And call me old-fashioned, I'm probably, unless I hear a much better argument, I'm against legalized marijuana right now. I know we have medical marijuana, but the legalized marijuana, if you go out to Colorado, it has not been a rousing success.
No?
It's actually been a rousing failure. There's more younger kids smoking pot, and now a lot of the medical evidence is talking about smoking pot leading to psychosis. And so I'd like to see the state of Connecticut hold off on that topic.
Okay.
But I'm not sure they're going to. I know they're moving full steam ahead, and you have a governor who is for it. So in all likelihood, we are going to have legalized recreational marijuana, and we will deal with the consequences of it, okay? Hopefully we will deal with those consequences in a well-funded way, but I think you're going to have law enforcement issues. I think, you're going to have more people driving under the influence of marijuana.
Yeah.
And you're going to have some other social implications of people being under the influence of marijuana, maybe when they shouldn't be, whether it's at the workplace
Right.
or just walking around the street. So it's a very active legislature right now, and I think it's super important for people to be fully engaged. And I'm engaged because I'm an elected official. I represent the town of Old Saybrook, but people like you and your staff here, it's really important for people to follow what's going on at the state, because there are a lot of changes that can affect both the social life in the state of Connecticut with sports betting and marijuana, but also the cost of living in 3 or 4 years. So a lot of stuff going on.
It is,
and a lot. And the reason I want to talk about it is because it affects Old Saybrook. All of what I'm talking about affects my day-to-day job in Old Saybrook in some way, shape, or form. So, and then locally, of course, we have
what's going on?
What's going on?
Yeah. There's a lot going on in the town of Saybrook.
We are heading to the budget.
Yes.
We have a referendum slated for May 14th. The Board of Finance has concluded its review. The town mill rate right now is poised to go from about 19.6 to about 19.76. And if you were to run a calculation on that, on a $600,000 house, it's about another $65. So I'm not saying any amount of money is a small amount of money.
It's a ballpark.
But it is a reasonably small increase given what's going on. And of course, we have 2 renovation jobs going on. So you're going to see some scaffolding at the Kate coming up.
That was actually in the newspaper the other.
Yeah, it was in the Harbor News.
That was in the Harbor
that's
News
right.
last week. I saw that.
Of course, we have a new reporter at the Harbor News, Aviva Luria.
Haven't met her yet.
She's doing a wonderful job.
Is she good?
So you're going to have some scaffolding going up at the Kate and at the Chamber of Commerce building at the same time, because that re-roofing project hasn't been completed yet. Because the roof is leaking there.
Yes.
So it's all going to be redone. And they weren't able to get it done last fall, so they're going to be doing it this fall. So there's going to be some construction going on, but when both those jobs are concluded, you're going to have 2 buildings that probably weren't done as well as they could have been done the first time. We're finally going to take care of some of the problems that they had when they were built, due to some lack of funding at the time. So, but yeah, it's there's always, stuff going on. We're finishing up our 18-19 budget right now. Last year, as you know, we had a big sidewalk project that
That's
we
right.
did in the fall.
Yeah.
And boy, I'll tell you, the amount of feedback that I've gotten on those sidewalk projects has been just phenomenal.
I like
just
'em.
From adults that are using them to children who are riding their bikes to school, they can now stay on the sidewalks and not go on the road. And the way the fiscal year this year is shaping up, the end of the 18-19 fiscal cycle, June 30th, looks like we're going to have a pretty sizable surplus. And I've already contacted the contractor who we used for the sidewalks last year, and I'm hopeful that he will be able to get back and do more sidewalks. And what we'd like to do this time is from Dairy Queen on Route 1 to the high school, that section of town.
That chunk. Okay.
That would get heavily used. All those sidewalks are old asphalt sidewalks, and they need to be redone. And then we head into the 1920 fiscal year. All right, do you believe that? The 2020 fiscal year is upon us.
That's crazy. Carl Fortuna, we're about to say goodnight, but before
We are,
we do,
okay.
I want to thank you for coming down.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for
Hopefully
having me on.
We'll see you soon.
Sorry if I kept blabbing
That's
on.
okay.
I love being on the show.
At least I had a good half-hour nap. So on behalf of Carl Fortuna, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.